Up there, there's a link to a fillable PDF workbook. It's got a lot of the ideas and thinking exercises that I'm going to talk about today in a way that you can use them practically. So you can use that PDF either while you're listening, or you can listen first, learn the scaffolding, learn what's going on, and then afterwards take a look at the workbook, maybe work through it this weekend and develop a plan and some strategies using that. So I hope that's really helpful for you as well. Again, that's just linked in the PDF up there, or it's also included in the email that I sent. Okay, so let's get started. I will share my screen and we can do the PDF. Okay. Cool, so I'll let everybody get caught up there. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. I'm just going to check on the volume. Hang on. Fantastic. Seems like we've got volume and we've got PDF, so that's awesome. Okay, so welcome. Welcome to Emotional Eating and Self-Sabotage. So this is a free online workshop, and it's with me, eating psychology coach, Samantha Russell. So what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to cover? So we're going to talk about what is self-sabotage? Like, what does that mean? How do you do it? Okay, how do you self-sabotage? Why do you self-sabotage? What causes self-sabotage? How can you stop? And there's 4 steps. Then I'm going to talk about some concrete strategies for healing and working with self-sabotage. And then we're going to have a question and answer time. And I've got some questions that have come in from people who have signed up, so I'll go through those. And if anybody is here live and I have any live questions, I'll go through those as well. So there's a little map of what we're about to do today. And I'm estimating it'll take about an hour. Okay, so who am I and why on earth am I doing this? So my name is Samantha, or Sam, and I'm a certified eating psychology coach. So that means I work with women who struggle with emotional eating, binge eating, unwanted eating behavior, and they also usually want to lose weight, although I have worked with a client who wanted to gain weight as well. So I work with women generally in their 20s, 30s, 40s who are struggling with those eating issues, and they want to love their bodies, love their eating, stop obsessing over their eating, and just live a life that is full of freedom with food, happiness and joy with food and their body. And we do that, and it's amazing work, and I love doing it. And recently I've done a couple of in-person events where women have come up to me and talked to me about this frustration they have with self-sabotage, and the fact that the minute they see progress, they find themselves, doing the opposite behavior from what has been working. And they've said they've been very, very frustrated and confused about why that's happening and what's going on. So I put this workshop together to try and help them, and also help you guys too, who obviously struggle with it as well. So that's me, and that's why I am doing this workshop. You can find me over at my website. Well, you're on my website if you're watching this, unless you're watching a replay on YouTube, at livethewhole.com. And there's lots of cool free stuff there, free courses, free ebooks, lots of blog posts to help you out with unwanted eating, binge eating, and just health in general. Okay, so let's get started here. What is self-sabotage? Right, so I'm sure you know this feeling. You want to change. You want to become more awesome, to make your life the one that you know you deserve. You have a plan. You probably have a pretty good plan. You're excited. You're motivated. You're committed to making this the time that you actually make your dreams a reality. So you get started and it's amazing and you're doing so well. You know, you're going to the gym, you're eating in a way that is supporting your goals. You know, all that good stuff is going on and it feels great. And then you're not doing so well. Things start to fall apart. You've skipped the gym like 5 out of 6 times in the past 2 weeks. The takeout pizza is sneaking back into your diet. You know, you just sort of collapse and think, why am I even bothering here? This plan obviously sucks. I obviously suck. You're back to square one, or worse, you know, you actually slid backwards. Does that sound familiar? So I say self-sabotage is any behavior that we voluntarily do that undermines our bigger goals. For the focus of this workshop, that's healing emotional eating. But self-sabotage can happen anytime, anywhere, for any type of goal. Okay, so this workshop is not just relevant for your eating and health behaviors. You know, it can apply to your work, your life, your relationships, you know, any goals that you've set that you know you self-sabotage on. So that's what self-sabotage is. Now, how do you self-sabotage? So what behaviors are you doing or thoughts are you thinking that are stopping you from these behaviors or ways of living that you know are going to get you where you want to go? All right, some really common ones. All of a sudden, you're really busy. You're too busy to go to the gym. I get this a lot with clients. You know, they commit to health coaching with me and all of a sudden they're too busy to set regular appointments just as we start to make progress and change. Maybe you're too tired. All of a sudden, all your energy is gone. You know, you don't have the energy to put into this change anymore. Maybe, and this is really common, you start a new habit or a new behavior and you do it for a couple of weeks and you don't get the amazing results you thought you were going to get. So you think, obviously not working. I'll try something else. And this happens every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks you have a new diet, a new gym routine, a new master plan for getting, you know, the relationship with food or the body that you want. And you just keep switching between new sort of miracle plans. Next one, I deserve it. You deserve either a break. You deserve not to go to the gym today. You deserve the cookie, the cake, the hour in front of the TV by eating the entire pizza. You know, you've worked really hard the past few weeks. You probably deserve a break. You may also feel like, I'm too weak. I failed every time before this. Why am I even bothering now? Like, it's too much effort. I'm just going to fail anyway. I'm pathetic. What the hell? Give up. You think, this once won't hurt. Okay, this once skipping the gym won't hurt. It won't. But the twice, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time, that's just this once, they will. And then my personal favorite, this is one I use even though I hate it so much, YOLO. You only live once. I use this myself. I have been known to use this. You only live once. Okay. Why am I bothering with this change? Which, you know, not all changes, every phase of them is not always enjoyable or easy. And you think, well, you know, I've only got this one life. I might as well just live it up. You know, what the hell? And all of these behaviors, all of these thoughts will make total sense in the moment. They will seem like the most reasonable, obvious, logical things in the world. Like, of course you should take a break. Of course you shouldn't go to the gym today. Of course you shouldn't even start or keep going with this change. Like, too much on your plate and you're just going to fail anyway. Duh. And your brain is gonna pull that trick. And you're going to start thinking like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stick to anything? Because a few days later or a week later, you're going to find yourself once again eating your emotions and not getting anywhere towards your goal. And you really start to think that there is something wrong with you or wrong with your willpower. Well, I just want to say it's not you. It is definitely not something that is wrong with you. And it is definitely not a problem with your willpower. It's a problem with our strategy. And that's what we're going to get into today. But first, we're going to talk about the why. As we know, the why, the reason behind things, is really important to healing or solving a problem. So why do we self-sabotage? Basically, like these little ninja dudes, we self-sabotage for protection. That might sound crazy, but hear me out here for a minute. Self-sabotage comes from many different angles, but it's usually because you don't know on that deeper gut level what the outcome of a change will be. And that's scary. Fear sneaks in and it fills those gaps of what will happen with some pretty awful worst case scenarios. They might be conscious or they might just be unconscious, which is where a lot of self-sabotage comes from. Yes, you might be better off in the long run if you don't eat the whole bag of chips, or you do go to the gym, or you do lose weight. But where you are now, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's upsetting, it's familiar. And your mind and body tend to take a pretty strong, better the devil we know than the one we don't approach to life. Meaning that change is scary, unknown, and difficult. And deep down, there are parts of your mind that are working to keep you safe from that dangerous, unknown change experience. No, it's not sensible, rational, or logical. It will feel that way, and it's probably not what's best for you. It's possibly not even what's safe. Okay, staying, doing what you're doing may not even be the safe option. But the unconscious part of your brain, it still tells you, oh, new is bad. Just stick with what you know. You already know emotional eating, comforts you a little bit. Just stick with that. Don't try something new. It might not work. It might make it worse. And so we self-sabotage. So these changes and the parts of yourself that you have to explore to start healing can be pretty scary, especially when we're talking about emotional eating. That can have some pretty deep causes. And the parts of yourself and your emotions that you've pushed away and are using food to deal with, they're obviously not fun, or you'd be dealing with them, which is why you're protecting yourself from them. So any journey into that side of yourself, well, it's quite justly going to be full of fear. So as clinical psychologist Dr. Cindy Knorr says, your immediate reaction is to see a threat in anything that's different from what you're used to. So you tend to stick with what you know, even if it's not serving you well. So that is why you self-sabotage, because we're afraid of the unknown. So what causes that? If we look at what causes that fear, what are these unknowns? I'm going to talk about a few now that I commonly see with women I work with. See if there's any there that resonate with you. Okay, you may have other ones as well, for sure. This is not the extensive guide, but see if any of these ring true. Okay, so we've got basic fear. It could be fear of change, of looking deeper, of not being strong enough, good enough, just not being enough. It could be fear of all kinds of things. Fear of failure is real, but fear of success is also very real. You may actually fear reaching your goal because who you are now is who you believe you are. If you change, if you heal your emotional eating, who will you be? if you lose weight, who are you if you're not the chubby friend, the cuddly friend? Who are you? What does that success mean? I've also worked with women who tell me they fear healing or losing weight because right now they can blame everything that goes wrong with their lives on that struggle. Like if somebody doesn't like them or they fail at something, it's not really their fault or the fault of who they are. It's because of their weight, or it's because of their eating, or it's because of their illness. They actually consciously know that they fear. If they heal that, fix that, get out of that situation, then all of that responsibility is on them. And that's pretty heavy and pretty real. And that can require some help to work through that one. Okay, our next one is identity. And this, I spoke a little bit about this just before, but so often our food and eating behavior, not to mention our body image, are an integral part of our self-image and just who we are in the world, who we show up as. For example, I have this friend and she's built a huge part of who she is socially around her intense love of chocolate. It's like her identity is fun girl who loves chocolate more than anything. You know, if there's chocolate around or somebody mentions chocolate, she is right in there, right on that. And it made her emotional eating into something that was okay. Like it was a frivolous, fun part of herself that she really embraced. And that was great. That was cool. That was fine. You know, until that wasn't what she wanted anymore. And then when she tried to heal that or get out of that, she had this very real question of like, who am I if I'm not chocolate girl? If I'm not the girl who loves chocolate? And she really struggled with this question, and her ability to change and heal was stalled until she was able to like reimagine herself and come to terms with who else she could be, what other identity she could have if she didn't have that chocolate girl identity. So if your identity is really tied up in the goal that you're trying to achieve or the thing that you're trying to change, self-sabotage out of fear of, not having that identity anymore is super real. Okay, next one, willpower. Really, really, really common. Okay, I have a willpower problem. I'm just not strong enough. My willpower gave out. How can I get more willpower? Okay, so willpower is where you try to just hold on. You try to white knuckle your way through, relying on something you're called willpower, instead of investigating deeper into your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors. And the problem is that willpower is a really shallow and surface approach to change. And the results that you see are super, super flimsy. It doesn't hold up well in the long term. It's like hanging from a ledge by your fingers. You can hold on for a certain amount of time, but eventually you're going to get tired and you're going to fall. And that's what change from willpower is like. You constantly have to hold on to that ledge. It never becomes more natural and it never becomes easier. It just gets harder and harder and harder as you hold on tighter and tighter and tighter. So I must say, sometimes a just do it, just get through it attitude can be super useful. But in the long term, if you have to keep just doing it, you're going to get so tired. It's exhausting. Okay. And when you're exhausted and you've used up all your willpower, all those other options of you deserve it, this isn't working, just take a break, they're going to seem way more attractive. So willpower is pretty much going to guarantee that you self-sabotage pretty majorly at some point. Sooner or later, it's not going to work. So bad strategy. I'm going to tell you some good strategies soon. Hang in there. All right, too much. Doing too much too fast. This is also pretty common. Unlike the other problems that I've just talked about, this one often doesn't have, a deep-seated emotional thing going on. You just got so excited or so enthused or you read a book that told you everything to do and you're now trying to do too much, change too much. It's really just about overwhelm. You get all enthusiastic and all excited and you take on too much change. You start going to the gym 5 days a week, you start a new diet, you start journaling, you start a meditation practice, and you last like 3 days because it's just too much change all at once and you can't support it. So it all falls apart. You end up doing, failing, or what you call failure, or what you call self-sabotage, because, you just wore yourself out. It was just too much to do at once. Okay. And our last one here, motivation. Okay, that title's probably a little bit misleading. I don't mean what's motivating you from inside yourself. I mean, where is the motivation coming from? I speak to a lot of women who are changing not because they want the change themselves. They actually feel like they're doing pretty well, like they're fine. But so many other people have told them that this isn't okay. This behavior isn't okay. This diet isn't okay. This body size, this look, this image isn't okay, and they should be trying to change it. And enough people have told them that over a long enough time that they've taken that on as their truth. They now believe that they need to change. But deeper down, they don't. So they've got this conflict of motivation, this conflict of goals. And eventually your deeper self, hopefully, will win. But the surface desire of that change for other people, is going to make you feel like it's self-sabotage, like it's failure. So if you're coming at your goals or your change from somebody else's idea of what your life should look like, or God forbid, what your body should look like, that is also going to lead to some pretty major struggles with self-sabotage. Okay, so really, if you're not addressing the deeper patterns, issues, or triggers, which are generally based on your underlying belief systems, things like, I'm just not worth it, I'll fail anyway, I'm the fun party girl, health food is boring, wanting to lose weight is shallow and vain. Okay, that's a common one I see women struggle with. If I lose weight, I might be attractive. If I'm attractive, I'll have to date. If I date, I'll get my heart broken. And then I'll never recover and I'll never be happy. These are underlying self-beliefs that may be motivating your self-sabotage. So it can be really tricky to see those underlying things, those underlying motivations for your self-sabotage. Sometimes you'll know exactly where your limiting self-beliefs are. But it can also be really great if you have a trusted friend or family member, relative, a coach, a counselor, a therapist. If you just ask them like, hey, why do you think I'm self-sabotaging? Or do you think I have any underlying self-beliefs that are causing me to self-sabotage? Quite often, they will have some pretty compassionate and pretty insightful stuff that they can share with you, because they can quite often see the patterns in your dialogue or the patterns in your behavior that you're struggling to see yourself. And they might be like, well, yeah, you're self-sabotaging because you don't really want this. Or you're self-sabotaging because you're afraid of being attractive. And that can be a really huge discovery moment. So if you're struggling to look for your own limiting self-beliefs, and you're struggling to sort out what your motivations are and why you're self-sabotaging, just asking somebody close to you, or asking like a professional that you work with, a mental health professional that you work with, can give some really, really great answers for you to start working with. Okay, so that's the how, the what, and the why. Let's take a look at how you can stop. All right, we're halfway through the workshop. How can you stop self-sabotaging? Right, I've got 4 steps for you. 1, awareness. 2, triggers and patterns. 3, reframing your experience. And 4, develop new patterns. All right, I'm going to go through each of these step by step and explain them to you. But as you work through these, just be aware that they're going to be pretty conscious and feel very forced in the beginning. If you consistently work with them and allow the change in focus and the change in approach to really just gently permeate yourself, you're going to be able to create the real change that will mean you no longer have to think about these things anymore. So in the beginning, like when you were learning to drive a car, you had to think about so many things, but now it's automatic. This is like that. Okay, it's going to take a bit of conscious focus in the beginning, and then it will become more natural, and it will just become a part of who you are and how you function in the world. All right, so let's take a look at awareness. Awareness of your self-sabotage behavior. It can be either before, during, or after that behavior. And you can ask yourself, where am I self-sabotaging? When? What behaviors am I using to self-sabotage? What am I thinking or saying to myself at these times, or before, or after? And what does the self-sabotage experience feel like? What are my emotions there? Now, these questions are in your workbook. Okay, you can download the workbook and get these and fill it out there. But the idea here is to just bring some more awareness, some conscious awareness to those self-sabotage behaviors and put words right down on paper. What is it that's going on for you in those experiences of self-sabotage? So once we've got that, we move on to look at triggers. We use that awareness information to look for patterns and triggers. So when are you self-sabotaging? What does it feel like? Maybe there are some people, places, things, situations that are consistently triggering your self-sabotage. It might be thoughts. It could be boredom, confrontation, jealousy, shame, fear. Could be celebration. Could be insecurity, joy. Something as basic as watching TV, going to work, family dinners. Okay, those are anything that makes you feel emotional can trigger emotional eating and can trigger self-sabotage. So by being aware of what's going on and what you're feeling over the course of a little bit of time, maybe a couple of weeks, you can look at that and maybe see the patterns and the triggers of what's setting off your self-sabotage. Okay, and once we've got those triggers, we can use them. We can do a few different things with those triggers. We can reframe and reauthor those triggers and the coping mechanisms that are causing your self-sabotaging behavior. So once you know what your self-sabotaging behavior is, and the fact that you're using it to deal with fear, uncertainty, insecurity, identity issues, or any of those things we talked about earlier, you can start to see that your self-sabotage is just trying to keep you safe. Okay, it's actually a positive thing in your life. Okay, as hard as it is to believe that, you can reframe this self-sabotage experience. Now, how the heck would that help you? Why am I telling you to reframe your self-sabotage? So you've got your awareness, you've worked out the triggers, and now I'm saying, love your self-sabotage. Look at it and feel like it's a good thing. Okay. Why? Why are you doing that? Okay, I'm going to tell you. So your self-conscious, and by extension, your self-sabotaging behaviors, is really doing its best to look out for you. It's working to make sure you stay alive, and that any threatening situation that could be dangerous, you stop, you step away from. It's not your fault that is counterproductive to your goals. Okay, your body and your unconscious mind are doing their best to protect you. It's really trying its hardest for you, so hating it isn't going to work. Instead, for this step, be on the lookout for where this self-sabotage is operating in your self-talk, your reasoning, and your behavior. And when you do find some, work hard on not feeling ashamed or weak. Thank it for being there. It's you looking out for you. You can firmly but gently tell those self-sabotage or fear feelings, thank you. Thank you so much for looking out for me. I understand you're trying to keep me safe, but I'm okay. I appreciate your concern, but this is safe and I'm going to do it. And you can say that as many times as you need to when you feel that fear creeping in. Thanks to your awareness and identifying the triggers, you can now identify those situations and apply this sort of gentle compassion instead of the hatred. Now, it can take some time for this message to sink in, but by addressing your self-sabotage so directly and as a friend, you can start to move through it and to the other side. Okay, why? Because when you fight something, it fights back. It pushes back. Everything you push pushes back. So if you can gently welcome this fear or these self-sabotaging tendencies and just thank them for being there, for trying to keep you safe, it's so much easier to let them go, move on, and not self-sabotage. It paves the way for really positive internal dialogue and the possibility of changing from a gentle place of kindness, of ease and flow, instead of that control, hate, push we use when we're in fear or shame or feeling threatened. Okay, so what are some new strategies that you can use to move through this? How can we get going? Right, so we've identified, we got aware, we've identified the triggers, we've accepted our self-sabotage behavior, and we're looking at things from a new positive point of view. Now, what can we actually do with these triggers now that we've found them? Okay, you can A, choose to remove the trigger. Don't go there, don't see them, don't do that thing. You can B, choose to cope with the results of the trigger. So you're going to develop new coping strategies to use, okay? Instead of the self-sabotage or instead of the emotional eating, you can develop coping strategies to deal with that in a different way. Or C, you can leave the trigger powerless. So you just don't care anymore. That confrontation with your boss that would have caused you to feel so bad about yourself that you went home, gave up on your goals, and self-sabotaged, you can create a new mindset that means you just don't care about that situation, and that trigger becomes powerless to you. Okay. So remove the trigger. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you can avoid a situation you know is going to trigger you into self-sabotage or into emotional eating, you don't have to do that thing. Okay. Maybe it's easy to avoid certain people or certain situations in your life. You can cope with the result of the trigger. So there's so many things you can do here. And this is a couple of the questions that I got from people signed up for this workshop. How can I cope with these triggers? There's some different things you can do instead of trying to willpower through it when you get triggered. Okay. 3 really concrete strategies for you here. You can use breathing and slowing down. So instead of panicking and rushing, if you feel threatened, if your identity feels threatened, if you feel like, oh my God, I've only got this one life, I should just go and eat the entire chocolate cake. Take some deep breaths. Do some breathing exercises. Look them up on YouTube. Slow down. think it through. The gift of time is one of the best things you can give yourself if you're prone to self-sabotage. Okay, our second strategy here, journaling. This is great. I love journaling. Could be with a pen and paper, could be on a computer screen, the notepad on your cell phone, voice notes, I don't know, talk it out is great. But just write down what it is that's triggered you. How are you feeling? How do you want to cope with it? And that can really help you work things through and release that trigger before it becomes more of a problem. And then the last one here, this is something I've been experimenting with lately, is gratitude. Being thankful, being grateful. And you can, when you run up against something or you can feel that urge to self-sabotage grow, you can pause and just write down or think about or speak things in your life that are going well, or things in your life that you're really grateful for. And real scientific studies have shown us that this can completely change how you're experiencing the world in that moment. And it's a wonderful coping strategy. So if you're feeling triggered to eat or to self-sabotage, to not go to the gym, to feel exhausted, gratitude is a great, really quick, really positive way to get out of that negative mindset that might be triggered and get into a bit more positive flow. So that's how you can learn some new coping strategies. And there's tons of coping strategies. These are just 3 really easy ones that you can start doing right away that are going to help you out. Okay, and our last one here, obviously one of the more difficult ones to come to terms with, leaving the trigger powerless. You probably feel like your triggers have so much power over you, it's insurmountable. Okay. Maybe if you're like me, I am super triggered by any type of confrontation. Okay. Online, offline, real, perceived, anything at all that makes me feel like I have been threatened or questioned will really trigger me to want to emotionally eat or give up whatever I've been doing, whatever my goals are. And so this exercise to leave the trigger powerless is all about completely reframing your experience of that trigger. And I'm going to explain to you how to do that. So it's called reauthoring your story or authoring your story. And the truth is that most of the problems you face stem from the stories you tell yourself about your life, yourself, and the world. They might be stories you've learned from others or ones you've constructed for yourself through your own experiences. Like, for example, maybe you tried to do something new as a child. You tried a new sport and you tried and you weren't very good at it. And you felt like people were laughing at you. Maybe some other kids teased you and you were like, oh my God, I'm the biggest failure in the world. Nobody likes me. You know, I'm never going to have any other friends because I failed at this. And, you know, as a kid, fine, that happened. You moved on. You thought it was forgotten. But now, as an adult, you logically know that that mindset isn't true. But the quiet story that's going on in your head behind your experiences, when you try to do something new or difficult, like starting a new gym routine or developing a new way of eating, you fear that if you fail, you're going to feel awful, feel rejected. Everyone will hate you. You'll have no friends. Okay. This story from childhood, no matter how ridiculous you logically think it is, there's a big chance that that story is now controlling how you see the world. And so you self-sabotage and you never really start, or you divert yourself into like a why bother or some sort of other mindset. Okay. So you're self-sabotaging yourself because of this story. Okay. It could be a story from childhood. Many of them are. Or it could be a newer story that's just, you know, based on past experiences or things you've seen on TV, things that have happened to friends. But the cool thing is that this isn't real. The story you're telling yourself, like, I'm scared of failure because everyone will know I'm a failure and I'll never have any friends. It's not real. It's a story. And you are the author of that story, and you have the power to change it. Okay, this is another exercise that I've put into the workbook. So I'd suggest grabbing a pen and paper or grabbing the workbook, which is fillable, and writing down exactly what you think will happen to you physically, spiritually, emotionally, if what you fear actually happened. So if you have gone through all those steps of your self-sabotage and you've identified what fear it is that is causing that self-sabotage that's holding you back, just write down the story of that fear. The fear of success, the fear of losing, the fear of failing, the fear of losing your identity. Look for the story behind that. What are you saying to yourself about it? Okay, and once you've got that, you can actively rewrite that story into something more positive, something that actually makes more sense for your life. So using the example I just told you about the kid who tried a new sport and failed and thought, nobody's going to love me. The first story would be, if I try this new way of eating and fail, I'm afraid that I'll feel really awful and that I won't be worth knowing. I'm afraid people will find out I failed and think I'm just weak and not want to be my friend anymore. Okay, but a very basic story that a lot of us maybe are quietly telling ourselves. Okay, new story. But I realize that this is a story and I'm going to go with a different version. New version. If I try this and fail, I will be one step closer to success. I know one thing that doesn't work for me, and I'll feel proud that I had the guts to give it a try. I can share what I've learned with others, and that will help them too. People will admire me for trying something hard, and will support me when I try again. Okay, so that's the new story. That's reframing that failure experience into something full of growth, full of positivity, full of helping others, and being gentle on yourself. So over time, when you feel yourself repeating that negative fear-based story, you can consciously shift to this new story you've written. And over time, that will become your new truth. And it's really going to cut down and possibly even end the self-sabotaging behavior, which is ridiculously powerful. So of those three strategies, go back. Of those three strategies, remove the trigger, cope with the results of the trigger, or leave the trigger powerless. Those are not steps, and one of those is not better than the other ones. Okay, it really depends on what your triggers are and where you're at. Like, if you've got the trigger of seeing my best friend's boyfriend really triggers me for some reason, just don't see them. Okay, you don't have to reframe the experience necessarily if it's easy enough to just not do that thing. All right, and if you do have to do the thing, but you feel like you can cope with it, do B. Or if it's something and you feel there's a real deep internal story going on, you go for C. Okay, it's really a personal choice, and it's not like we're all aiming to make the trigger powerless. Okay, that's not always the result that we want. So don't feel like you have to go for C because it's the most difficult one, because it might not be appropriate for the situation. All right. So what have we just learned? Quite a lot. All right. So how to stop self-sabotaging. First, as I've gone through, you need to get an awareness and an understanding of how and why you're self-sabotaging. You need an awareness of the behavior and to identify the triggers and the patterns. Then we work on reframing those experiences so you're coming at the change from a place of love, care, and understanding. Once we've got that under our belts, we're going to develop new patterns and new strategies to either remove the trigger, cope with the results of the trigger, or leave the trigger powerless. Leave those people, places, things, situations completely powerless over you. And that is the 4 steps: awareness, identify triggers, reframing, and developing new strategies. The 4 ways that you are going to overcome, heal, and move through your self-sabotage behavior so that you can achieve the goals, the body, the diet, the life that you dream of. Yes, there's a little bit of hard work in there. No, there's probably not a quick fix. But the results are worth the time and the effort and the self-discovery that you put in here. Okay, so we're going to go on now and have a look at the Q&A, the questions. As I say, I've got some from readers, and we'll switch back over so you can see me in a moment. But if anybody else has any questions, please just pop them in the chat box, which I hope is working. And I will answer your questions as soon as I see them. Okay. Let me just check that that's working. All right, so let's switch back over so you can see me, and I'll do a little bit of Q&A because there were some really awesome questions submitted to the sign-up sheet when you guys signed up. All right, so I've got my note paper here because some of the questions were pretty good. All right, so somebody wrote in and said, I'm not going to use your names because I don't want to like out you here. So somebody said, I tend to binge whenever I'm home alone, but it's not because of loneliness. I actually relish being alone. I can be incredibly full, but my body goes on autopilot and I just go rummaging for food. It's gotten so bad that I actually ask my husband to keep his snacks in the trunk of the car, but that's not really practical and it's not fixing the problem. Okay, no. It's not practical and it's not fixing the problem. But I think we can all relate to this feeling of powerlessness and confusion over what's going on. So this is actually the answer to a number of questions that got submitted here about emotional eating, which is obviously a huge struggle, and it's something that I've been through myself. And my biggest piece of wisdom and advice around emotional eating is you are doing it for a reason. It is filling a need. Okay, it's not because you're weak. It's not because, probably not because you're addicted to food. Okay, if your emotional eating is at what I would term like a sort of a medium to medium high level, and you're not into eating disorder level, your eating disorder is filling a need that you can cope with and you can choose to fill in a different way. And you have to get to the bottom of what that need is. Are you looking for pleasure? Are you looking for comfort? Are you punishing yourself? Do you have maybe some nutritional gaps that need filling that can, at a physical level, can contribute to emotional eating? Do you need relaxation? Are you very stressed? Okay. There's 100 emotional reasons that you could be emotional eating, and only you, or if you're working with a professional, are going to be able to get to the bottom of those. And just like we've been talking about with the self-sabotage, once you've got to the bottom of those triggers or those causes of emotional eating, you can start to choose to use different strategies or different ways of dealing with those emotions instead of eating. So it's not that, you need to go drink a glass of water and your cravings will quit. No, if they're being caused by something emotional, that's not going to help. You need to work out what the need is. What need is your emotional eating filling? And then how could you fill that need in a more positive way that's going to serve you in the long term? Okay. Question number 2, how do we get past an unhealthy relationship with food that's been ingrained since childhood, like probably from our parents? This is a tough one. And admittedly, most of our eating issues, things that we see as issues have come from childhood, maybe from our parents or our relatives or our siblings. And they can be tough to deal with because they're so unconscious and often so much a part of our society that they're hard to deal with. If you feel like you've got really deep issues from childhood, it can be worth talking to a professional, like a psychologist, a therapist, an eating psychology coach. It's the type of thing that we work with to uncover those stories and those belief systems that are underlying the relationship with food, and then systematically taking them apart and building you up something that makes more sense for you and is mentally and spiritually and physically healthier and going to work better. So you need to, my basic advice for that is a little bit like our self-sabotage one. Write down the story that you're telling yourself, or write down the patterns that you're seeing, and have a look at how you can begin to change those into something that fits better with who you are now as an adult. Okay, question number 3. This was a really short question and a really interesting one. How can I disconnect my emotions from food? Powerful question, and something that we've probably all asked ourselves from time to time. My answer: you don't. You do not disconnect your emotions from food. You can't. As humans, we're completely emotional creatures, and when we take something into our body, it's an emotional experience. And I would argue you cannot disconnect emotion from that, and you don't even want to. Can you imagine how sad and tired and boring and dull life would be if you cut off that huge source of emotional connection? Because that's how you connect with parts of the world, how you connect with yourself, how you connect with other people. So you don't want to disconnect your emotions from your eating. What you probably want to do is learn to deal with generally negative, but not always, negative emotions in a way that doesn't involve you eating them. You don't want to eat your feelings. It's okay to feel emotional about food, but you don't want to use food as that coping strategy for your emotions. And how can you do that? Again, identify the needs, identify the emotions that you're having trouble dealing with, and find new ways of moving those through your body. And journaling can be a really, really good exercise for this. Okay, next question. How do I become a stronger person and not let my sadness, moodiness, or anything else crave things that are toxic for me? Okay, again, great question. Let me start by saying you are strong. You are stronger than you know, and you are strong enough to deal with this and anything else that is sent your way. Emotional eating is not an issue of strength. Okay, it is not. It's an issue of strategy. You know, you feel these obviously very negative emotions: anger, fear, anxiety, stress, moodiness. And the only way you know how to either release them or push them and dull them down enough to make them acceptable and manageable for you is through eating. And there are many, many other positive ways of thinking and doing things that will allow those emotions that same release. And what I always say to people is emotions, part of that word is motion, movement. And when we eat, quite often what we're doing is we are stopping those emotions from moving because we don't like them. Like anger, fear, sadness, they're scary emotions. And so we're like, shut up, go away, push you down. I'm going to just put all this food on top of you so I can't feel you so much anymore. Like, get in the corner. And I argue that you are strong enough to feel those emotions. And if you let them move through you by journaling, by speaking your emotions, okay, that can be a really good one. Saying, I'm angry because blah, blah, blah. I feel sad because da, da, da. And that's okay. You can so much more easily let those emotions go and allow them to move through you and not push them down with food. Okay, so it's not about getting rid of the emotions. It's about finding new ways and finding new ways to trust yourself with those emotions too. Because quite often when we're eating to avoid our emotions or eating to calm our emotions, it's because we don't trust ourselves to be strong enough to feel them. And you are. You know, this is something that I know personally, something I have struggled with for many years. And when you start to work through your emotions and allow them that motion, things become so much easier. Okay. I have some exercises on the blog that I will link to below in the blog post. And it's an emotions in motion exercise, and that can be really helpful. Okay, our next question, is emotional eating a symptom of anxiety or depression or both? Okay, I wasn't too sure what to do with this question. Yes, emotional eating can be a symptom of all those things, anxiety and depression. It can be a cause, it can be a cofactor. It's not a diagnostic tool. You can't say because I'm emotional eating, I must be depressed, or because I'm emotional eating, I must be anxious. You know, emotional eating can be caused by joy and celebration and you know, being really happy as well. So yes, it can be a symptom of something deeper for sure. If you feel like something else is going on, like depression or like anxiety, there's a lot of resources out there to help you. Obviously, a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists are trained to deal with these things, and I would suggest seeking some help from them if you're feeling like your underlying issue is like a very serious or more of a mental health issue, or you're feeling really, really scared of it and would like professional help. That's a good thing. But please don't feel like because you're emotionally eat, you must have a mental health issue. There's tons of causes for emotional eating, ranging from, you know, the most benign, you're not drinking enough water, through to, you know, clinical eating disorders, clinical depression, things like that really need professional medical help. Yeah, so I hope that answered that question. I wasn't too sure quite what you meant by that. Okay, what are useful alternatives for dealing with emotional eating or triggering thoughts, such as comparison and jealousy, that fuel my emotional eating? All right, cool question. Very, very similar to what we were just talking about with self-sabotage. These are triggers. They can trigger your emotional eating and they can trigger your self-sabotage. And we can use the exact same coping strategies that I outlined in the PPT. So breathing and slowing down, journaling, and gratitude. Those are 3 great strategies for stopping in the moment when you're feeling those things and just moving them through. You know, take that pause, breathe, calm down, journal it out, write about the experience. What are you feeling? Why do you want to eat? What would you rather do? What are other ways that you can show yourself that, you know, it's safe, you're okay? And then also the gratitude, you know, what are you grateful for in this moment? You've got a roof over your head, your best friend's coming over, your husband just cooked dinner. What are you grateful for? And that can really calm you down and take you out of that negative experience that is going to cause you to want to eat and put you in a different kind of experience. Okay, next one. How can I keep on track when I make some progress? Well, I think we answered that question in the workshop. So if you found what is the right track for you, it actually shouldn't be that difficult, because the right track is going to feel like empowering and natural, and you're going to want to keep going. The self-sabotage might sneak in there, but don't worry. Just use the strategies that we've outlined in the workshop, and I think you'll be fine. Okay, how can I maintain focus once I've achieved my weight loss goals? Basic answer here. Just create a life that you love and that nourishes you inside and out, and you won't have anything that you need to focus on. Okay. Constant vigilance and willpower is no way to live. So while you're dieting, while you're exercising, while you're losing weight, make sure that you are creating a mindset, daily practices that you love, that bring you joy, so that when you've reached your goal weight, you're not coming off a diet. You know, you just continue to live your life in a way that will support who you are and the things that you love, and you won't have to worry about losing focus because it's just your life. And last question, how can I avoid emotional eating and use food in an appropriate way? same answer as the first question there. Find out what needs your emotional eating is filling, or emotions that you're too afraid to feel, and start to find new ways of coping, new ways of leaving those powerless, and new ways of dealing with those situations. Okay, guys, thank you very, very much for coming. I hope the workshop was super helpful. Again, the workshop is up there. I'm going to post some links and resources in the blog post below. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any follow-up questions or anything they would like to say, there's the contact form up the top there. And I am working with clients at the moment. I have a couple of spaces left if anybody would like to do a free call to find out how we can work on your emotional eating, if that's something you think you would enjoy or benefit from. All right, thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.